The night Vane showed up at my apartment, I was on the kitchen floor with a dish towel wrapped around my left hand, trying to remember if I'd paid the electricity bill or the water bill. Because I definitely hadn't paid both. I hadn't expected anyone. I never expected anyone. The knock came hard. 3 strikes, evenly spaced, the kind that didn't ask permission. I didn't move right away. Living in a building like mine, on a street like mine, you learn that hard knocks at 10:30 on a Tuesday don't usually mean good news. They mean a landlord who wants cash in hand, or a neighbor who wants to borrow something they'll never return, or something worse. I pressed the towel tighter against my palm and waited. The knock came again. Same rhythm, same pressure. I got up. I looked through the peephole, and for a moment I genuinely thought I was hallucinating from blood loss. Lucian Vane stood in my hallway. He was wearing a dark overcoat, hands at his sides, no expression on his face. Behind him, barely visible at the edge of the fisheye lens, was the outline of a second man, broader, standing back, watching the stairwell. Vane himself was looking directly at the peephole like he knew I was already there, already staring. I didn't open the door. "Lena," he said, "not a question. Not a request. Just my name, in that voice that didn't raise or lower for anything. My full name was Lena Marsh. Nobody called me Elena except my mother, and she'd been gone for 4 years. Everyone else called me Lena, including, apparently, the man who ran half of the Eastern Syndicate's financial operations and signed my paychecks every 2 weeks through 3 layers of shell companies. I opened the door. He looked at the dish towel around my hand first, then at my face, then at the apartment behind me, the single lamp on, the papers spread across the table, the empty coffee mug tipped on its side. "You're bleeding," he said. "I'm fine." That's not what I said. I pulled the towel tighter. "What are you doing here?" He didn't answer that. He stepped inside instead. Not pushing past me, exactly, but not asking either. That was the thing about Vane. He moved through spaces like he'd already decided they were his and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. I stepped back. I didn't mean to. My body just did it. He stopped in the middle of my kitchen and looked at the table, the papers, the numbers. 3 years of syndicate accounts, restructured twice, cross-reference against city permit records and shell company filings that technically didn't exist. I'd been working on it for 11 days straight, and I was almost done. He picked up one of the pages. "Don't," I said. He put it back down, slowly, without looking at me. "Sit," he said. "I'm sorry, your hand." He nodded at the dish towel. "Sit down." I didn't sit. I stood there with my bleeding palm and my exhausted brain, and I looked at him. Really looked. Maybe for the first time in the 18 months I'd worked for the Vane organization. He was older than he appeared in photos, which was saying something because the photos already didn't lie much. There were lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there when I first started. A tension in his jaw that looked less like anger and more like a man who had been carrying something heavy for so long he'd forgotten it wasn't supposed to feel that way. He went to my sink, opened the cabinet underneath without asking, and found the first aid kit, which told me he'd been looking carefully enough to know where people kept things like that. He set it on the counter. "I slipped cutting onions," I said. "It's not serious. Onions." He looked at the stove, looked at the counter. No cutting board, no onions, no knife. I said nothing. He pulled the stool from the counter and set it in front of me. He sat on the edge of the kitchen table instead, not quite sitting, really, just resting his weight there the way men like him did, like furniture was optional. "Give me your hand," he said. I didn't. He waited. That was the other thing about Vane. He could wait in a way that made the room feel smaller. Not threatening, just certain. Like time itself had agreed to run at his pace. I gave him my hand, he unwrapped the dish towel slowly, and I watched his face while he looked at the cut. It was deeper than I'd let myself think about. The kind of thing that probably needed stitches, or at least steri-strips, and I'd been sitting on the kitchen floor trying to decide which bill to pay instead of dealing with it. He didn't say anything about that. He cleaned it with antiseptic from the kit, and I hissed through my teeth, and he didn't slow down. He was not gentle the way someone gentle would be. He was careful the way someone precise would be, which was different. Less warmth, more accuracy. I found I preferred it. "How long have you been sitting on the floor?" he asked. "I don't know what you're talking about. Your right knee. There's tile dust on it." I looked down. He was right. I hadn't noticed. 20 minutes, I said. Maybe 30. He wrapped the gauze around my palm without speaking. His fingers were calloused. I hadn't expected that. Men who ran the kind of operations Vane ran didn't usually have hands that looked like they'd ever touched anything rougher than a conference table. But his hands were rough and scarred in ways that told a different story than the one the suits told. When he was done, he didn't let go right away. He just held my hand in both of his, looking at the bandage like he was checking his own work. "You didn't answer my question," I said quietly. "Why are you here?" "I came to see the Kellerman filing. You could have sent someone. I could have or called. I could have done that too." He let go of my hand, stood up, and then he did something I didn't expect. He went to the stove, looked in my cabinets, found a pot, filled it with water, and set it on the burner. "What are you doing?" I asked. "You haven't eaten. You don't know that. The mug is empty, and there's no food on the counter, and you look like you've been running on coffee and arithmetic for a week." He turned the burner on, found a box of pasta in the cabinet above the stove, which was embarrassing, because that box had been there for 2 months, and I'd been eating peanut butter crackers because I kept forgetting to buy things. Close enough. I sat down at the table. I don't know why I did. I'd worked for the Vane organization for 18 months, and in that time I had communicated with Vane himself maybe a dozen times. Through intermediaries, through coded reports, through the accounting files I filed twice monthly, and the anomaly reports I flagged whenever something didn't balance. I had never been in a room alone with him. I had never expected to be. The rumor among the junior staff was that Vane didn't go anywhere without a purpose. He was not the kind of man who made social calls. Every meeting had an agenda. Every agenda had a number. He was also, the rumor went, engaged to be married. I had seen the fiancé's name on a personal expense filing 3 months ago. A large transfer to a venue in Manhattan, a second to a jewelry house in the Diamond District. I hadn't asked about it. It wasn't my business. I'd filed it under personal discretionary and moved on. He made the pasta without speaking, found the salt without asking, served it in a bowl he'd rinsed twice before using. He set it in front of me. "You didn't come here for the Kellerman filing," I said. He sat back down on the edge of the table. "No." "Then why?" He was quiet for long enough that I started eating, because the pasta was hot and I hadn't realized until now how hungry I actually was, and I was not going to sit there holding a fork pretending I didn't want it, just because the situation was strange. "There was a discrepancy," he said finally. I looked up. "In your last report," he said. "Column 7, line 42, a rounding adjustment that took 11 cents from account and redistributed it across 4 other accounts. The total was 0. The math was correct." He paused. "I've never seen anyone make an adjustment that precise. Most people don't notice 11 cents. 11 cents in a syndicate account is 11 cents someone moved deliberately," I said. "I notice everything. I know." He was looking at me differently now. Not the way people usually looked at me, like I was the quiet one, the back office one, the girl who ran numbers and didn't make noise. Like something behind his eyes had recalculated. "That's why I came." I set down my fork. "That doesn't make sense. Someone has been skimming from the H-series accounts for 8 months, he said. 11 cents at a time, 17 different accounts. Across 4 different organizations, he let that sit. The total is not 11 cents. I stared at him. "How much?" I said. "Across 8 months, leveraged and redistributed through the accounts the way they've been moving it, 4.3 million. The number sat in my kitchen like a physical thing. "And nobody caught it," I said. "You caught it. I caught the 11 cents. That's the same thing." I looked at my bowl. I looked at my bandaged hand. I thought about the 11 days I'd been working on this, the way certain numbers had felt slightly off in a way I couldn't explain. Not wrong exactly, just not quite right. The way a picture hung a millimeter crooked isn't wrong, but your eyes keep finding it. "Who?" I asked. "That's what I need you to find. It's someone inside. Yes, someone with access to the H-series. Yes, That narrows it to about 9 people. 8, he said. You're one of them. I looked at him. You're not on the list, he said, and his voice was completely flat, the way flat voices are when they're not casual but deliberate. You found it. That removes you. Most people would say finding it makes me more suspicious. Most people aren't doing the accounting, he said. Something shifted in the room. Not dramatically. Not the way things shift in movies, with music swelling and light changing. Just a quiet, internal shift. The kind that happens when you realize the conversation you thought you were having is not the conversation that's actually happening. Why did you come yourself? I asked. You could have sent someone to give me this assignment. He was quiet. You didn't want anyone else to know you were bringing me in on this, I said slowly. Which means, whoever is skimming, you already have a suspicion, and you don't trust the people around that suspicion. He said nothing. That's a yes, I said. He picked up the Kellerman file from the table. He leafed through it without really reading it, like his hands needed something to do. For the first time since he'd arrived, he looked, not uncertain, exactly, but like a man who had made a decision and was now standing on the other side of it, checking whether the ground held. The engagement is off, he said. I blinked. What? The wedding? He set the file down. It's not happening. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know what it had to do with anything we'd been talking about. Nadia's brother manages 2 of the H-series accounts, he said. Oh, that was the thing. He wasn't just looking for an embezzler. He was looking for confirmation of something he already knew, about someone he'd trusted in the most permanent way a man like him could trust someone, and when he found it, he was going to have to decide what to do about it. And he'd come to me, not to the men on his security team, not to his legal operation, not to the other accountants who'd been with the organization longer than I had. To me, in my apartment with the single lamp and the pasta and the dish towel on the kitchen floor. You need a paper trail, I said. I need an airtight paper trail, one that will hold up outside the organization. He looked at me steadily. Yes, that was significant. That meant law. That meant whatever he built, he was building it to survive scrutiny beyond his own walls. Give me the full account histories, I said. All 8 months, every transaction, every adjustment. I need access to the H-series master records, not the copies. The copies have been touched. I picked up my fork again. And I'm going to need a better lamp. This one gives me a headache. He looked at the lamp in the corner. Something moved through his expression that wasn't quite a smile, but was closer to it than anything I'd seen from him. I'll have access codes to you by morning, he said. I'll need 2 weeks. You have 10 days. 12. He picked up his coat. 11. I ate another bite of pasta. Fine. He walked to the door. I didn't get up. My hand was throbbing, and I was tired in the specific way you get tired when adrenaline stops holding you up and your body remembers everything it's been ignoring. He paused at the door. Lena. I looked up. You should lock this, he said, meaning the door, meaning more than the door. I know, I said. He left. I sat there in my kitchen with the empty bowl and the bandaged hand and the papers spread across the table, and I listened to the sound of the building settling around me, the distant traffic 6 floors down, the radiator clicking in the corner. The next 11 days were the most precise work I had ever done in my life. I rebuilt the H-series account history from the master records up. Not the copies. The copies had been touched, like I'd said, adjusted in small ways that would have been invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for them. But the master records held the ghost of every transaction, every timestamp, every keystroke, and I could read them the way some people read faces. The thefts were elegant. Whoever had done this understood systems, understood them the way I understood them, which meant they thought in flows and balances and the quiet logic of where numbers like to go. 11 cents here, 11 cents there, never more than 11 in a single transaction, redistributed across accounts in patterns that looked like rounding errors at first glance, looked like automatic adjustments at second glance, and only at the third glance, the obsessive, sleep-deprived, bad lamp headache third glance, revealed themselves as something deliberate. Someone had built a river out of drops. Vane came back on the 4th day, not announced, not at 10:30, This time at 7 in the morning, when I was still in yesterday's clothes and had 3 different account ledgers open on the table, and a coffee mug that had been refilled so many times the bottom had developed a faint brown ring. He brought a better lamp. He set it on the counter without comment, plugged it in, turned it on. The light was warm and even and didn't hum. He looked at the table, at the ledgers, at the strings of numbers I'd written across 3 separate legal pads in color-coded ink. "You've been up all night," he said. "I sleep in pieces," I said. "It's fine. It's not fine. You're not my doctor." He sat down across from me. He didn't ask to look at the ledgers. He just looked at my face. "What do you have?" he asked. I walked him through it, account by account, transaction by transaction. The pattern I'd identified, not just the 11-cent skims, but the routing, the redistribution, the way certain accounts were being used as temporary holding pools before the money moved again. I showed him the timestamps, which clustered between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. I showed him the user access logs, which had been carefully scrubbed but not carefully enough, because the scrubbing itself left a signature. When I was done, Vane was quiet for a long time. "It's Adrian," he said. I had not said that name. I had not pointed to anyone. I had only shown him the access patterns and the timing and the methodology. But he said the name like he'd known it before he arrived. "Nadia's brother," I said. "Yes, he's been inside the H-series since the accounts were restructured. He helped build the restructuring," Vane said. "He was there for every design decision. That was why the thefts were so clean. Adrian had helped build the room, and then he'd hidden a door in it." I watched Vane's face. He was not a man who showed much, but there was something there, underneath the control. Not grief exactly, something harder than grief. The expression of a man who has run the numbers and gotten an answer he already knew, but still had to see written out. "The engagement," I said carefully, "was 3 months old," he said. "Announced before I had this." A pause. "I would not have allowed the announcement if I'd known. You need to be careful how you use this," I said. "If it goes through the wrong channels, it won't, Vane." I waited until he looked at me. "I'm serious. This is 4.3 million and it touches your family structure. If this goes wrong, it looks like retaliation. You need it to look like accounting." He looked at me for a moment. "That's why I'm talking to you," he said. We spent the next 4 hours building the documentation together. He understood accounting the way executives understood it. Broadly, structurally, and I understood it the way someone who grew up doing her mother's taxes at 12, and her landlords at 16, and her employers at 19 understood it, which was completely down to the cells. I told him what we needed. He told me what would survive outside scrutiny. We built something that was both. He left at noon. I slept for 6 hours. I woke up and it was dark and the new lamp was still on, warm and even, and for a moment before I was fully awake, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not safe. I don't think I'd ever felt safe, but held. Like the room had been attended to. I got up and went back to work. The 11th day I filed the final report. I sent it through the system we'd established, encrypted, time-stamped, containing every transaction, every access log, every piece of the pattern, assembled into a document that was so clean and so complete that it couldn't be argued with, only answered. Vane called 2 hours later. "It's done," he said. "I know. Adrian has been removed from the accounts. The money is being traced." "Good." A silence. "The organization is going to want to know who found this," he said. "You can say, it was an internal audit." "It was an internal audit, then that's not a lie." Another silence. Longer this time. "Lena, what the lamp," he said. "Does it help?" I looked at the lamp on the counter, still on, still warm. "Yes," I said. He was quiet for another moment. And then, in the same flat, careful voice he used for everything, the same voice he used for asset reports and logistics and the name of a man who had stolen from him for 8 months through someone he'd planned to marry, he said, "I'll be there at 7. Not a question, not an ask." I looked at the lamp. I looked at the papers on the table, the clean legal pads, the closed ledgers, the empty coffee mug. "I'll be up," I said.